Hello, welcome to Tuesday's Record Sport Hotline Live. I'm joined tonight by. I'm not even going to try it. I'm joined by Keith Jackson and Scott McDermott. Keith, how's it going?
How's it going? Well, you might have noticed that we're a couple of minutes late. That's just because I've only just darted into this studio. Hectic is how it's going. And it's been a rather frantic period of information gathering this afternoon, which I'm sure we're about to discuss, Daniel. But yeah, hectic would be the word.
Scott, how are you?
Exact same. Barely been off the phone all day today. Apart from to join you, Daniel, of course, because I scope everything live.
Well, Keith, you're saying ran off your feet. One of the things you've been up to is, I believe there's a story going online right now regarding the future of the next potential Rangers manager.
Yeah, look, let's not beat around the bush. Over the course of the last 24, 48 hours, the momentum behind Steven Gerrard has grown and grown. The noise has become deafening. I think there's even suggestions that his backroom team is selected, that Steve Davis will be joining him as number 2, and that Jordan Henderson has agreed to move from Ajax to take up a sort of player-coach capacity. And there's even suggestions doing the rounds that this appointment could be made officially at Ibrox tomorrow. I've got to be honest with you, about an hour ago, I was coming around to the conclusion that this sounds right. However, in the space of the last hour, other information has come to light. I'm now less than convinced again. And what I'm told is, Daniel, and the story that's going up online just now is, if it is to be Steven Gerrard, he has got one major hurdle to have to overcome before he could commit to Rangers. And that's a really interesting domestic conversation with Mrs. Gerrard. What I'm being told is that the family are really settled in the Middle East. The Gerrards have a family home. I think it's a 10 grand a month mansion in Bahrain, which was within an hour's drive of Saudi, where Steven Gerrard had been working at El Atifiq. And they really like it. They're really enjoying the lifestyle. And I'm told that the lifestyle part of this is a major factor. I think that they have previously discussed, Steven's next move maybe being somewhere like Dubai, because that was a favourite kind of family holiday resort for them. All I'm saying is, yep, we think there has been contact and conversations. There is this suggestion that it's a fait accompli now. He is the last man standing, the preferred candidate. I'm not even going to counter that. What I would say is, I just don't think it's as cut and dried as all that. And what I'm being told is that Steven Gerrard may have asked for just a little bit more time to have these discussions, to work out his kind of family situation. And Rangers are equally kind of up in the ante on that, because they want a decision, and they want a decision yesterday. I think the American takeover is a lot closer than Dave King, or to completion than Dave King made out when he suggested it could be mid-June. I think it could be days away now, and you kind of get the feeling that what they want to do here is present new owners, new takeover, new future, new manager, all in sort of one bundle over the course of 24 or 48 hours. I think that Rangers will be pushing Steven Gerrard now and saying that there's got to be time limitations on this period of deliberation. But as I said, there's so much information out there. As I said, even the identity of his background team being discussed. But we did get to that situation about 3 weeks ago with Davide Ancelotti, didn't we? And we knew who he was bringing. So this thing has actually been really complicated. There's been all manner of names and not very much in the way of information coming out. Rangers have stuck to the sort of standard line, which is that the process is underway. So it's just there might just not be as cut and dried or as straightforward as is being presented right now. That's certainly information that's come to us in the last hour. look, this situation is changing. Phone call by phone call, as Scott will tell you, hour by hour. You get a new little bit, but this I think is important. I'm just, as much as I can see why there's a real clamour, as much as I can see why there's a sort of romance to the whole thing and unfinished business, and the guy that won Rangers' last title, I think the family situation is ultimately really important to Steven Gerrard, as it would be to any guy, and it's one that might be a little bit more complicated and add a little bit of a complication to this situation, which maybe hasn't been factored in so far.
Scott, as Keith says, the rumours are rampant. I mean, in our comment section since going live, Craigie says the press conference is booked for tomorrow. He says that Gerrard's going to be announced and Jordan Henderson too. And obviously, our friend of the show, Gianni, says he's 7-1 on Bet365. I mean, at the moment, he seems to be the name in the frame.
Well, if the press conference is booked for tomorrow, the press haven't been told yet. None of us have been informed of any press conference as yet.
Yeah, but Scott, in fairness, we wouldn't be, would we?
No, of course.
The protocol would be, we'll get an invitation to go to the press conference, or you'll get the invitation to go to the press conference. Maybe, if it was 12 o'clock tomorrow, they might start informing us about 10 o'clock tomorrow, give us a couple of hours. So we wouldn't have learned tonight, in fairness, Scott.
I'll be surprised if it's tomorrow, Daniel. But I agree with Keith, it's been complicated, difficult. It feels as if it's chopped and changed several times. Over the weekend, I felt momentum building for Steven Gerrard. The wee snippets that I was hearing, I was starting to believe that there was a genuine chance that it could be him. But a bit like Jacko, the most recent information in terms of the calls I've made, I've spoken to people who are close to Steven Gerrard, and listen, you can never rule anything out categorically, but their feeling is that it won't be him, that the timing just isn't right. There's a lot of what Jacko says I've heard about his family being really settled in Bahrain in terms of kids' schools, stuff like that. So there's a reluctance there to give that up so suddenly. And as I say, as time's going on, and as I say, the day I've been making calls, trying to chase this up, trying to get a handle on it, my gut feeling is that it's unlikely to be Steven Gerrard. Now, listen, it's obviously a massive decision for Rangers, massive appointment, a massive decision for Steven Gerrard as well. So there could be an element of cloak and dagger about it, and it has to be obviously kept as hush-hush as possible. So I'm not ruling anything out, and I make no apologies for trying to cover myself, because it has been complicated.
That's covering exercise here, wee man.
I can only tell you my gut feeling just for people I've spoken to. And as I say, some of those people I'd like to think are fairly close to Steven Gerrard. And they don't think it will be him at this stage. And I think Jacko said it's important. He mentioned, Rangers, the official stance for the club, irrespective of all the reports that came out, even for David Ancelotti and Russell Martin, who I'm sure we'll speak about, they are adamant, as of even mid-afternoon today, that the process is still ongoing. There are still more than one name involved in this, and there is still no preferred or leading candidate as we stand. So, believe that if you want. That might be the club. That might be just a PR exercise. I'm just telling you what their kind of official line is.
Standard line though, isn't it, Scott? Because what you can't say is we've got a preferred candidate, and then if that falls down, the next guy in looks like second choice. So
of course, but as I said to you before we came on, Jack, I just think the Gerrard thing's building so much momentum. As Daniel says, 1-7 favourite with the bookies. Some bookies stopping taking bets.
Yeah.
Gerrard fans, Rangers fans are getting excited. I'm just surprised if it's not going to be him, that this narrative has been allowed to build without somebody quelling it a wee bit. Do you know what I mean?
It's a good point,
on the contrary, actually, you kind of wonder if it's been encouraged from people inside the club. So yeah, and that's another reason why it makes it difficult for guys like me and you. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. We're trying to establish the facts, and I think it's important. That's why, you know, we sort of broke this news tonight, that because I just get the feeling now, Scott, I don't know about you, but I get the feeling everybody in the rant is simply expecting to see Steven Gerrard walk in through the front doors again tomorrow.
It feels that way. I mean, I think looking at the comments, guys, before we move on from this, I think it's fair to say a fairly mixed reaction to it. I mean, Harry says, don't want Gerrard back, we need to move on. Luke Skywalker says, I actually did prefer Marco Rose, to be honest. A couple here as well. This one, not on Gerrard, but on Russell Martin. If they're going to give it to Russell Martin, and they've been well just giving Ferguson another year. Martin's hardly got a mind-blowing CV. I mean, like I say,
Ferguson would agree with that.
That's from Barry in Glasgow. No, look, Rangers fans can write in and get involved. There maybe the bulk of them are really excited, but it doesn't seem to be a particularly inspiring choice.
You've said that all along, Daniel, haven't you?
Aye, I don't really.
Your view on that?
I don't get it. I just don't get it. Why? I don't get why he'd want to go back. I don't get why Rangers would want him back. It just feels like a retrograde step, to be honest.
I think from what I heard previously, I think Steven Gerrard at the back of his mind has always thought it would be nice to go back to Rangers at some point in his career. I just don't know if the timing of this is right for him. And you can argue, for and against that, but I just don't think he thought that it would come up at this time, or that he thinks that it's the right move in his kind of managerial career at the minute. And in terms of the fans, there is a big debate about Gerrard. I agree with you. I think it's split. I think there's a support there for him in terms of, he's the guy that got 55. He stopped 10 in a row. He built a really good team. He gave Rangers their reputation back in Europe, by getting them to the group stages. Of course, there's the flip side to that. And listen, the trophy that he did win was the most important in that, in those 3 years for the fans. But there were some big disappointments along the way as well. And before COVID hit, that night they lost to Hamilton at Ibrox, plenty of punters wanted them gone. And they might not get the chance to go in and win that title. So I think there is a real split. As if you get Steven Gerrard back just now, after what he's been through post Rangers, will he be the same Gerrard? Will he still have that fire in the belly, that hunger? That same guy that turned up at Ibrox, on the touchline with the fans inside the stadium, giving it the clenched fists and the let's go. I'm not sure that the same Gerrard to come back. So that would be a slight concern. But as I've said all along on here, the plus points are he ticks a lot of boxes. If you believe Rangers need somebody that knows the club, somebody that's British, somebody that understands the rivalry, somebody that won't be fazed by going up against Brendan Rodgers. He ticks a lot of those boxes, and ultimately that's why the club have sounded him out.
That's a fair point, but this comment, I think, more articulately sums up what I was trying to say. Colm says, new owners said they were going through due diligence. I think they have Stevie Wonder in charge. They think Gerrard is their best man. 1 trophy in 3 years in Glasgow, sacked by Villa, even got sacked in the Middle East, and he's considered the best available choice. Is that right? Aye. And also, I wanted to get your guys' take on this before we move on. If I can, we get so many comments in, which we really appreciate. But Rangers Easy OK says, Russell Martin's name isn't going away, and I have a feeling it's going to be him. Keith, what do you think?
Well, a couple of things on that. First of all, in terms of what Scotty was saying and the comments there as well about Steven Gerrard, I mentioned the other night, Daniel, that I think there has to be an element of that. When Steven Gerrard left Liverpool to take on that job at Ibrox, it felt like the launch pad. He was ready to take on the world. He was, this was his first big shot in management, and he had nothing but sheer self-belief. He was driven by it. and he just arrived here, you know, ready for a square goal with whoever, you know, stood in front of him, be that Brendan Rodgers or anybody else. But I said the other night, Daniel, the trajectory since Rangers hasn't been great. Now, towards the end of his time at Rangers, you know, the fans had enough of him. He was shipping points. He'd get knocked out the Champions League, I think, by Malmo. Lost up at Dundee United. You know, dropping points. It was a really bad start. And I know that there was a background issue there between himself and Douglas Park. So it wasn't by this point, it wasn't a happy marriage. And then he left and he went to Aston Villa. And you're looking from a distance, waiting to see, right, okay, so let's see the real Steven Gerrard then. Is this guy going to hit the Premier League like a firebrand? Is he going to take Villa up? Is he going to really impress? Is he going to, you know, match what he does as a player in the dugout? And it was miles and miles and miles short of that. It was real damp squib stuff. Yeah. And then he's left, sacked. Goes to Saudi Arabia, and when you take the Saudi Arabia ticket, it does raise a big question mark over, well, where are you mentally? If you think that Saudi's your best bet right now, is this just a matter of winding down and getting as much money as you possibly can and living in beautiful mansions with the family and embracing a new sort of period of your life? That would be a worry, and as I said, I think I used the word, so he's bruised, and I think ultimately damaged a little bit by his experiences. It's not gone the way that Steven Gerrard thought it was going to go when he came firing out the traps from Anfield and up the road to Ibrox to answer the call. And so that, you know, once bitten, twice shy, isn't it, a little bit? You wonder if that hunger, that self-belief has been eroded a little bit because it just didn't work the way he assumed it was going to work. And you could also flip that around and say, yep, but because it went well for him and he did win a title at Rangers, maybe he sees that as the ideal place to return to, and he can rediscover his passion and his enjoyment and the competitive streak. But I don't know. I'm like Scott, and I think there is a bit of scar tissue there now that wasn't there the first time around. I'm not sure you're getting the same version of Steven Gerrard if he was to, you know, overcome that hurdle of convincing his wife to leave the sunshine in the Middle East behind and come to Glasgow. And she wasn't that keen on living in Glasgow the first time around either, was she? She stayed down the road.
Barry for Blockern, easy choice.
Well, she didn't want it. She didn't want to live in Glasgow. And if that was the case back then, why would it have changed now? So quite a lot of issues around it. But as I said, all we can do is sort of bring the news as we're getting it. You know, I think people would be looking at the backroom team there as well that we're talking about, Scott. You know, I don't know if you've heard any of this, but Stephen Davis as the number 2, Jordan Henderson coming in a player coach capacity. What's Jordan Henderson now? About 34, still got a good couple of years in the tank. Would probably walk into that Rangers midfield.
Still Ajax captain.
Yeah, but I think he has issues with Ajax, and he's also like Gerrard. Remember I said to you the other night about this tax issue, the tax implication. Yeah. Well, I believe that his ended on around about the same time as Steven Gerrard's has in April, which makes him able to return to the UK now without getting hit. So there's so many factors, and I wonder if there are Rangers fans that are looking at that and we're getting really excited about it as well. And, you know, I'm not saying it's definitely not happening. What I am saying is it's definitely just not as cut and dried as it's being presented by some.
Well, another comment...
and the Russell Martin. Yeah, we've talked about this, haven't we? And, you know, that comment was... I totally see it as well. Do you know, Russell Martin, I really admired the way that he got Southampton playing football when he brought them up from the Championship. They were a great watch. And that's all a philosophy-based approach. It's really modern management, contemporary stuff. And there might be, you know, people, the incoming guys at Ibrox really might fancy a bit of that. Mm-hmm. But as much as they couldn't fail to be impressed by that season, last season was an absolute catastrophe for Southampton. So much so that they're celebrating at the end that they beat Derby's total by a point, or whatever it was. That doesn't say to me, there's a signpost to Ibrox because his fingerprints are all over what happened at Southampton. You know, I know that he wasn't there for the whole season, but it was catastrophic, and the goals that they were conceding were really horrendous. And you know, as much as Rangers fans might want to get behind an idea or a philosophy, they won't stick by it if Rangers are losing goals in the manner in which Southampton were hemorrhaging earlier on this season. That wouldn't bode well for me.
It was a catastrophe, Keith, because ultimately Russell Martin stuck to his philosophy in the Premier League.
He was too stubborn, Scott. Yeah,
against better teams, and that has always been the big question mark over Russell Martin. I've heard so many good things about him, and obviously interviewed him a few times, and I think he's a good guy. I like the way he speaks. I actually think he's got a bit about him, personality-wise, character-wise. I think he could go in at Rangers and handle that side of it. But the huge question mark is...
You think, Scott?
I think he could handle that side, Jack, in terms of the media and the personality, and that. I think he could deal with that. The big question...
The intensity of the environment, the win at all costs mentality.
Well, but this ties in with what I'm going to say. Win at all costs. He has to have a plan B. I mean, you have to have a plan B in Glasgow to go and win games. I don't doubt he would come in, try and transform the playing style, change the culture at the club, which, by the way, are things that we probably need done at Rangers in the long term. No, probably, definitely need in the long term, in terms of a specific way of playing and a winning culture at the club. But that's difficult to do quickly, Daniel. And Rangers need quick results. I keep saying this. At this moment in time, Rangers are 4 in a row behind Celtic. So many millions behind the bank. Obviously, the Americans come in, may change that slightly. Brendan Rodgers is manager, which is difficult for him to get in there, given his record. Somebody has to come in at Rangers and hit the ground running immediately. There'll be no settling in period. There will be no 3-4 months grace. No, because you're trying to implement a playing style. That just won't be tolerated by Rangers fans, I don't think.
No, I agree.
I think to go and win a title, and that if Russell Martin came in, as I say, I think I don't doubt he's a terrific coach, but he would need to come in and win right away. And I don't think that's been the case, obviously, at any of the clubs that he's been at before.
That's fascinating, right? Because here what you've got here is flexibility versus philosophy. Because Russell Martin isn't flexible. He's got his philosophy and he sticks to it. And I think the Southampton fans really, really enjoyed it for that season that they were on an upward trajectory. Not so much in the Premier League. Barry Ferguson was trying to introduce a more flexible kind of system, and that he would flip it with it 3 at the back, 4 at the back, diamond in midfield, guys out wide. He was changing it game to game, and that's an interesting thing that Rangers are going to have to make a decision on, because all the guys that we're talking about seem to have very different approaches. Sean Dyche's name I've just seen coming up at the bottom of the screen. Obviously, very, very, very close working relationship with Kevin Thelwell previously at Everton. Well, he's got a philosophy as well, but it's not the same kind of philosophy as Russell Martin. So you've got various different sort of approaches, all being considered for the same role.
Jack, a lot of that depends on recruitment, though. I think the only chance Russell Martin would have of coming in with that playing style and for it working immediately or pretty quickly, a bit like Ange Postecoglou did, was first of all by getting financial backing to go and get quality players, and then for it to work fairly quickly. No, where you could go and challenge for a title. If Russell Martin was to come in with his philosophy the way it is and work with that squad that's at Rangers just now, I think that would be nigh impossible for Rangers to go and challenge for the league. Yeah. I mean, he would need serious
the players don't have the profile for it, Scott. You're right.
They don't, 100%.
Well, look, time's getting away from us. I dare say we could talk about this all night if we wanted to. We have to still talk about the Rangers release list that came out earlier on today, 6 players released. Before we do that, maybe just to break it up a bit, Should we talk about Celtic?
Yeah, let's do that.
Our esteemed colleague Ryan McDonald had a really good exclusive with Giorgos Giakoumakis in today's Record Sport. It's definitely worth reading if you're a Celtic fan. I think we can actually see a little clip of what the former Celtic striker had to say on his time in Glasgow.
Looking back at your time at Celtic, how would you sum it up overall?
No, well, it's as I said before, it's gonna be the biggest flex of my life, my career, because I made my dream come true, playing for a massive club, being a star in this club, and then have all these fans to cheering your name, scoring goals. Like I remember the moment the ball was touching behind the net, on the back of the net, it was ecstasy. It was this feeling that the whole stadium was on the field, like cheering, screaming, whatever. And so, in the end of the day, as a sum up, I would say that I'm super proud. I wish it could last longer. I would love to last longer. And if that's possible to meet again, and to wear this jersey. If not, I will try to visit Glasgow in a derby, and a weekend with the Old Firm derby in Celtic Park. I would love to be there. And the fact that made me really sad, to be honest, when I left, is that my relationship with Michael in the end, as I said, it was a glass that was broken, and I didn't have the chance to say goodbye to the fans. Or I was in Celtic. I was in Celtic Park. Like I didn't have I would love to take the microphone and say a proper farewell to the fans. Maybe it's too much. But because it was only 1 year and a half. But my connection with the fans was not for a player that played only 1 year and a half there. So I would love to give them a proper farewell and tell them thank you for everything that made this journey special. And what I did, it was the biggest part was for them.
I think you really announced yourself as a Celtic player in that 3-0 win over Rangers in the February 2022. Now, some people I know say that was the best atmosphere they've ever experienced at Celtic Park, and that takes some doing. What do you remember from that night? Because obviously it was your first derby.
Well, yeah, the atmosphere. First of all, the atmosphere. Yeah, big time. It was the biggest, the craziest atmosphere I've ever experienced. And I have experienced since then in my career. I don't think I will experience this night again, because playing Champions League with Celtic is massive, it is amazing. But when you play Old Firm, I think the whole city is on fire. I remember we were winning like 3-0, if I'm not mistaken, 3-0 at halftime. I went into the dressing room and I thought I was deaf. I went to the doctor. I said, "Doc, I cannot hear anything." And it was, the contrast from outside, all that noise, to the complete silence inside the dressing room.
Yeah.
Which it happened something in my ears. I honestly couldn't hear anything. Like I was hearing like something in my ear. It's like, I said, "Doc, maybe I have a problem with my ears. Check that." I said, "No, relax. You're going to get out again and you're going to feel the same way."
Yeah.
Which eventually happened. It was, we went out, and I remember the game. We absolutely smashed them. We destroyed them, and I think we could score even more goals. But when you have these fans by your side and a strong team with very good individuals and a very good unit, you can achieve everything.
Ryan McDonald there with that exclusive interview. It seems that he wants to play for Celtic again, and there seems to be a little bit of an appetite in the comment section. Mark says he was treated very unfairly, won't get a number 2 striker like him again. Everything Ida isn't. John says Giakoumakis was a brilliant impact player for Celtic. It's a pity him and Ange, the club hierarchy, didn't get on. Marzuno says the big man would score 40 a season if he started every week at Celtic. And Kieran says happily take him back in a heartbeat over Ida, bring him home. What do you make of that, Keith?
Curious. It's usually a bit of a giveaway when a guy's, happy to do an interview to say and promote the idea of a return and say that he really misses the fans and all. Look, do you know what? He was in a rush to get out, is what I remember. So just another one of these players, and another one in a long list, by the way, of players who think the grass is greener and then kind of regret making that decision a couple of years down the line when they realise, what did I leave behind here? I'm entirely positive he would love to get that return. And you don't discount anything, because some of these comments are right in terms of, his value to Celtic as a second choice player from the bench. But that was the problem, that he never saw himself as a second choice striker from the bench. And inevitably it led to a parting of the ways between the club and the player. It was interesting, I didn't quite pick it up, but there was a great quote in there somewhere about, by that point, the glass was broken. Did he say who with? Was that his relationship with Ange, or
Michael?
He said Michael.
Michael Nicholson, right, okay. But I think that Ange Postecoglou would have been the driver behind that, because Ange just wasn't for having people moping and moaning and not falling into line behind what he wanted to do. Giakoumakis seemed to have a problem with Ange Postecoglou's authority on that, and it's obviously led to the situation which it led to. Listen, I think Celtic are a right good striker in their hands there, and it's regrettable that it didn't really work out, but Giakoumakis to me looked like a guy who, which is the complete flip of what we've spoken about with Adam Idah. Giakoumakis looked like a guy that simply wasn't prepared to sit there and watch some other guy play as a centre forward when he thought he should be on the pitch, whereas Adam Idah looks quite comfortable with it. So I don't know, different strokes and all that.
I agree. I think it was a great interview. I mean, brilliant quotes. Quotes were excellent.
Yeah.
But it does strike you as a guy he's sitting there regretting leaving there, because Jacko's right. I mean, unless my memory's deceiving me, I mean, he wanted more money, saw himself as a first choice, wasn't happy playing second fiddle. The offer came up with a better deal elsewhere. It suited him at the time. Celtic made a profit on him. So everyone seemed happy at the time. But you go to the MLS, he's ended up I think he's in Mexico now, is that right?
Mexico, Cruz Azul.
So listen, you're going to miss Glasgow, Celtic, everything that comes with that. So I think there's a wee bit of regret there that he maybe was a little bit hasty. And in terms of him coming back, I just think that would be difficult. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's playing in Mexico. Celtic have got that guy in Adam Idah. Whether you think one's better than the other, Idah's younger. Celtic have paid big money for him. Brendan Rodgers sees Idah as a guy he can work with and improve, and again make Celtic a profit at some point. So, as much as Giakoumakis would like to come back, I think it'd be pretty unlikely.
I don't take any pleasure saying this though, Keith. If I had the choice, I would take him over Idah. I think he's a better player than Idah.
Celtic have spent a lot of money on Adam Idah because Brendan Rodgers saw him as a player that you could spend significant fee on, but with proper work on the training ground, turn him into a player of twice that value, maybe 3 times the value. Brendan Rodgers made a big deal about trying to change the way that Celtic did their business in the transfer market. He wanted more ambition. He wanted to try and raise the level of quality. It would be an admission that didn't work out if all of a sudden they went and signed a 30-year-old to be further up the totem pole than Adam Idah. So I think for all number of reasons, I don't think it's something that you're going to see happening. Do I think that Giakoumakis still has plenty to offer? Absolutely I do, but I think Celtic have moved in a different direction, and I think the priority now for Brendan Rodgers will be to prove to the board that, by the way, see when I said give me £9 million for Idah, I promised you that you would make a return on it, because the whole kind of direction that Brendan Rodgers wants to move Celtic is to be that club that doesn't think twice about spending a fee like that on a striker, or £11 million on Arnie Engels, because they trust his judgment and they trust his ability to work with these players, improve these players, and turn them into profit in the transfer market. The previous structure, as we commented previously, was there's that chunk of money that you spent on one player. Well, you could spend it in three, and the hope is that buying a couple of players at 3 million, or three players at 3 million each, just if you sell one of them for 15 or 20 million, that's the model. That's the business model for Celtic. And Brendan Rodgers has worked hard on them to change that sort of philosophy. So he has to try and now make it work. I think going and get a player that would knock Adam Idah further out of the picture would be an admission that it didn't work, and so I wouldn't expect to see that happen.
I think that's a fair point. And Rebel there in the comments saying that he obviously 30, he does 22. Another fair point I'll take on board.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Idah will get better, Daniel. Honestly, I mean, look, the price tag is an issue for him because it gets thrown at him, almost on a weekly basis. But he's still relatively young. He's still scored some big goals for Celtic. Really,
that's fair.
And bear in mind, pretty much for the duration, he's been second choice striker to Kyogo and now to Maeda. I think Celtic fans need to just trust Brendan Rodgers a wee bit more. I think he'll come back next season better. You would expect Celtic to be better in terms of the improvements they'll make to the squad. But interesting to see what happens next year. Obviously, it looks like Maeda will be a number 9 now, full stop. But there's always that option that he plays wide, and Celtic maybe get another striker in. But I think Rodgers, like he has done with so many players, me and Keith have spoken about this before, I think he'll make Adam Idah better. And I think getting a full pre-season or another pre-season under his belt, coming back next year, I think he'll be better for it. I think the fans are a wee bit harsh on him at the moment.
I think the problem is, Scott, that in order for Brendan Rodgers to get the best out of somebody, and he does it so often, that particular person needs to be prepared to give him his best as well. And that's my one thing I've said consistently about Adam Idah. I've just not seen enough hunger. I'm not seeing enough desire to improve and to. But if maybe Brendan Rodgers can work on that mentality, or if just by working with him, Adam Idah sees the benefit and maybe grows up a little bit, because he is a young boy. But you're waiting for him to catch fire, or for a fire to be lit under him a little bit. And, it could be next season. He's always been a streaky sort of striker. I've said that since day one as well. So if he goes on a bad run, a barren run, I think you can see the body language doesn't look great, and he looks as if he's not really enjoying himself. Then all of a sudden, he can hit a patch where he did towards the end of the season there, where he's scoring almost every time he goes onto the pitch. And you can almost see the shoulders going back, the body language improving, and maybe the desire, the hunger, the appetite flooding back. If he can start next season in that sort of mood and that sort of form, then the next season could be a transformative one for him at Celtic.
I guess time will tell, and time is getting away from us, guys. But before we round off tonight's show, I mentioned earlier on, Rangers released 6 players today. They don't have a manager, Scott, but 6 players are all out the door. I mean, you you wrote about Leon Balogun earlier today on Record Sport Online. Really good article worth reading for Rangers fans. He's gone. Tom Lawrence as well. Kasanwirjo's gone. Rafael Fernandes. He was a good sign. Who's the other 2 that have gone as well? I really should have had this in front of me.
Kasanwirjo's away back. Cerny's away back.
Cerny, of course, yep.
No, look, it was just on the back of the Balogun stuff. It was just a kind of opinion of mine that maybe told you something about the new manager search is further down the line than you might think. I might be miles off it, but I think to make a decision on Leon Balogun, just to use him as an example, I'd be amazed if a potential new manager hadn't been asked about that. No, we need to assume that it's Kevin Thelwell, Niels Coppen, the people that are in there at the moment that are making decisions on these players that are out of contract now. With Ianis Hagi and Tom Lawrence, I think everyone expected that they'll be gone. That was kind of pretty much accepted. But there was a wee kind of swell of opinion towards the end of the season that Balogun, even at 37, might be worth keeping on. I certainly thought in this period, I can transition that's going to come up for Rangers, keeping a guy like Balogun inside the building might not be a bad thing for his experience, for his quality, as he's shown as recently as the last Old Firm game at Ibrox. So I just think it's interesting that these decisions, someone's making these decisions. Kevin Thelwell isn't actually due to start with Rangers until June, isn't due to leave Everton, but he's obviously working away in the background ahead of coming into the club kind of full time. Someone's making these decisions on Rangers' squad, and it just got me thinking that, as I say, maybe this manager search, Rangers are leading you to believe it's obviously a work in progress at the minute. I think making these big decisions, even making the decision on Barry Ferguson so quickly after the last game of the season, tells me that they have a pretty good idea of who's going to be the new manager, and whoever that is clearly was happy to let the likes of Balogun and Hagi go.
And Keith, I know we've talked about it a fair few times this season, but John David says, thanks for your service, Ianis. You leave us with some great memories. Shabbily treated at the start of the season, and unlike Dessers and Raskin, you weren't hiding up the back of the penalty queue in the cup final. I'm a bit bemused by Ianis Hagi's treatment. I mean, I do think there was probably no way he would stay at Rangers, but I think he's a really talented player who Rangers will miss.
Well, there was no way he'd stay at Rangers because Rangers didn't offer him a contract.
Aye, that's a good point.
So I think he was treated. I said it at the start of the season. I thought he was treated like a dog. I thought it was shameful the way that he was treated by Philippe Clement and the club in general. And I felt previous to that it was shameful the way that he was rushed off the premises by Michael Beale in order to make way for the big Sam Lammers revolution. No, for me, I feel really sorry for him because he's also one of these guys, I genuinely think he was settled, and I think he really took pride and, enjoyed playing for Rangers. I think he got what it means to people. And Balogun's the exact same. And what they've done there is, and what would concern me, I maybe take an opposite view to Scott. It looks to me as if this is the same recruitment department making the same decisions, not understanding. You're right, Scott. Balogun, by the way, despite his age, Rangers' best central defender.
Aye.
And I don't think there's an argument to be had on it. So he's the last guy that you want to see first out the building. 100% they should have put something in front of him. They're not going to have to bust the bank to give him a year's contract. But, and he might be 4th, 5th choice centre-half. But he's a guy that's proven time and time again he can be relied upon. He also really bought into the club in general. And I think he enjoyed the fact that he had that kind of 3-month stint with Barry Ferguson and Billy Dawes and Neil McCann, because they got it and he thrived on that. So I think that's a mistake. I think that Barry Ferguson had seen enough in Kasanwirjo in terms of his personality and his potential that was one that had he remained in charge, Kasanwirjo would have I think a contract offer would have been made there. He was desperate to keep Cerny, but that would have required Rangers meeting, what was it, €7 million, whatever that, 6 and a bit million euros, whatever it was for Cerny. Barry Ferguson would have pushed for that. So that tells, and now you start to wonder, well, I wonder if that might be one of the reasons that they were so quick to say thanks but no thanks, because recruitment had their own very clear and very specific plan for this summer. And if that is the case, and it's recruitment that are in total control of who comes and who goes, given their track record, then you just have to look at it and wish whoever it is that's about to be named as the new manager all the very best of luck, because that is a terrible starting point if you're relying on the same people that have been in charge of recruitment over the last however long it's been, because it has been catastrophically poor.
I'm just trying to imagine the conversation. The new manager comes in and he's building a squad and shaping the squad. And at some point, he says to them, "Well, I really need a third or fourth choice centre back. I want somebody experienced, 6 foot, play left side. He's got a bit of pace."
Where's the big guy Balogun?
Won't cost us too much. And they go, "Oh, funnily enough, we just let one of them go. He's just signed for Bolton." Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. That did kind of baffle me slightly. No, who's making that decision? Why the rush to make that decision when Balogun might well be somebody that the new manager would have looked at and thought, no, he'd be.
But Scott, on what basis would he not be? The only basis that he wouldn't be, and this is maybe getting to your point a little bit, is if a new manager is there, already signed and sealed, more or less, and has produced a list of targets that he wants and is certain that he can get, in which case you would say, right, well, Leon Balogun isn't going to feature at all on any basis because there's 4 or 5 players going to be in front of him. Then I can just about get it. But on any other basis, unless you've got a list of targets and you know that you're going to get these guys and they've been identified and there's been some talks ongoing behind the scenes which leads you to believe that they guys want to come, unless you know all that for certain, why would you let the best current defender you've got at the club leave when it really wouldn't cost you that much at all? He would have been more than willing to commit to Rangers, but Rangers haven't committed to him. Same with Hagi. And you just look at it, I certainly look at it, and I would worry from a Rangers perspective that they've got the wrong people in charge of a very crucial department. And not only that, but maybe part of, the reason that Barry Ferguson was not going to be a fit for Rangers, and maybe this points to what they do think is going to be the right fit as a manager, is he has nothing to do with that. This is going to become one of these clubs where recruitment is entirely run by this side of the building over here, and it's the manager or head coach's job to take whatever he's given and make a team out of it. Yeah. Because if Rangers are going to stick to that, and the recruitment sort of process doesn't change and change dramatically, there's no way out for them, because they're locked into a sort of death spiral with the people that are making these decisions.
I think that's a very fair point. Before we finish, guys, Gianni's been in the mood tonight. He says, Daniel is
always in the mood.
He's hoping the podcast hits the big time and he can move over with Richard Keys, Andy Gray and Gary Lineker. I'd like to put on record right now, I'm going nowhere, and neither of you guys were on long-term deals. I'm shutting that one down right now.
Well, I think you'd find it difficult to leave your $10,000 a month mansion in Falkirk, Dan.
Aye, that's true. I don't know who's on the show tomorrow night, but Gianni also asks who wins tomorrow night in the Europa League. So, while I've got you both here just now, how do you think it'll pan out?
Big Ange mic drop.
Think so?
Yeah, the ultimate.
No, I'm going Man United, Daniel. I'd like to see Spurs
win. You watched Man United? I know we're talking about two bad sides. This could be... I actually think it's going to be... maybe similar to watching a car crash, but I think you're not going to be able to take your eyes off this for all sorts of... I cannot wait for this match. And I really hope, really hope, and this isn't just a Liverpool sort of guy inside me, I really hope that Big Ange gets that trophy. I just think there would be just a sort of poetic justice there. However, I do concede the two of them have been absolutely murder all season.
Do you have a Liverpool guy inside you often, Keith? I couldn't resist.
On that note, I feel we're veering off towards apology territory again here.
On that note, I think that brings us to the end.
Listen, I'll give you a quick update before we go as well. A couple of calls as well. So spinning plates all over the place. The Dundee thing was interesting. Scott Burns came on last night and he had an exclusive under... sorry, what did I say? Up his hat? Up his hat.
Up his hat, that's right.
Yeah, he did an exclusive up his sleeve with regards Scott Brown, potentially under consideration for the Dundee position. Make some phone calls today. Scott Burns, as usual, absolutely spot on. Scott Brown and Sean Maloney both under serious consideration. Although I am told that process is very early stages and is likely to take well, certainly it won't be concluded before the end of this week, probably not before the end of the following week. So it could take a fortnight or so before Dundee are in a position to announce who's won that. But yeah, very interesting that I think Scott Brown is a real live candidate there.
Aye, very interesting indeed. I guess time will tell with that one as well. Managers moving all over the place. But that
Could
brings
be a busy summer, Daniel.
Will be a very busy summer. Do you know who will be covering it, Keith?
Us.
The Hotline Live. You won't miss a beat, except I'm on holiday in a couple of weeks, but apart from that.
Yeah, we're shutting it down for your holiday.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. All the comments have been absolutely brilliant again. If you want to get involved in the conversation, we'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Keith, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers,
thank you, Dan.
And thanks for watching. Hope you can join us tomorrow. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.